Okay, so it looks like we're gonna have to go with the fall with and revisiting the starter. Yeah, totally got obliterated by my stylist. Give it I did pre-form. I should say you do not have any lattes, no grid. You are getting this, which would not be a problem except they were less uniform than okay. So here we are. We're going to do the full uh, presentation today, like an appetizer. Anywho, welcome to Shades Pretty Skinny, where we bring everything so we can recruit about self-love, resilience, and personal development. Now, this topic comes about today because I was watching, I mean, it's something I've thought about, of course, but I was watching Shannon Sharp, it's Club Shay Shay with Mojo Brooks, the comedian, right? And they were talking about women getting their lick back, especially after like something happens unpleasurable and displeasurable. Um, but specifically after a man cheats on you, right? So they were talking about, a woman will get her lick back and you won't even know it. It says you have to tell you, you'll never find out the very good possibility that you want. And, they both kind of laughed about that. But Mojo was like, if I cheat, I don't want her to take me back because of that, right? And I paused a little bit because what exactly is that? Is it revenge? Because I have my own opinion about that too. Because you giving that part of yourself to someone else, whether you're a man or a woman, doesn't seem like a good cheat strategy to me. Okay. So you're feeling destroyed and then you're just going to engage in more destructive behavior. No, no. Anyway, I just seem to be, especially in a way that's hurtful, just to get back at something that is a good thing. So, is it justice? Some people will see it that way. Although, again, I think you're doing a great disservice to your own body. Is it violence? That's what we got to talk about today because we don't call it violence because nobody left with a black eye, right? Still alive, he's still breathing. He can still make choices and go and live his life. But what's become very apparent to people is that women hide a lot of things, okay? And there's a lot of tools to hide stuff, like makeup, wigs and hair extensions. We can't see, they say, see the soul through the eyes. There's lashes to hide that, right? Far hearts, right? Control top pantyhose before there's fire. Oh, those exercise pants with the scrunch butt crack that make it like your cheeks are separate and they bigger. Ooh. Bad to see an older blocker. They got some face for no reason. Oh, and keeping the lights off. Okay, so lots of tools to hide things where it looks wonderful, but the reality is different. So I want to talk about that when it comes to women being viewed as violent or not. Are they the nurturer that we have made them out to be, right? It's an unpopular opinion because society tends to frame violence as physical domination, right? Uses blood, broken bones. Um, but psychology recognizes multiple forms of violence. And when we think of women, we do think of them as physically more weak and frail than a male, so she can't inflict violence on me. Perhaps she cannot, right? But psychological realm covers physical violence, it covers sexual violence, it covers psychological abuse, it covers um, coercive control, covers relational aggression, covers financial abuse. And here's the part that's worth unpacking or revealing, right? Because psychological violence often leaves a very lasting and long scar. Okay. Um, there is in 2022, they did a systematic review about psychological abuse, and they found that it had one of the strongest associations with PTSD, mostly with the mom, right? Even stronger than some physical violence markers in both men and women. And that means we're walking into the realm of betrayal, humiliation, that gaslighting, the revenge cheating, the public shaming. Oh, you're small anyway, right? You don't have any money, you broke anyway. Oh, you gay, right? There's some of the shaming things that women will try to say to men to try to make them feel like they need to power down, right? And there's that emotional withholding, not just discernment so that we can get in a space to communicate in a healthy way, but I'm cutting you off from something. I'm withholding my participation as a form of punishment. Okay. And those things can fundamentally alter our nervous system and how our nervous system is functioning. So, not because, oh, my feelings are hurt, right? Because we see that as a weakness, especially for a man's feelings to be hurt. But what's happening with all of those things is actually altering the reality, right? And causing you to question it a bit. So violence is usually validated with visible evidence, like bruises, broken things. And we've seen those women in the movies, you know, they're punching their own lights out, making some kind of bruise so that they can have physical evidence to call the police out and credit the man with that physical uh, harm, that physical violence, so that in turn, then he will be taken to jail and put on trial as a punishment, right? Because I'm upset. So visible harm is easier to prosecute than invisible harm. I come out, I see one person that has bruises all over and another person who seems like they came out unscathed. I'm thinking you beat the crap out of them, right? Then we take into account that we're going to say a man is structurally, physically built different than a woman, so automatically you overpower, and this is the result of that, right? So a broken rib is going to have an X-ray that you can show evidence, but a broken psyche does not have that. It comes to us in a very different way. Anxiety, right? Hypervigilance, issues with trusting people and relationships. There's emotional numbness, withdrawing, being nonchalant. Some people might call it easygoing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. There's that attachment, all kinds of attachment issues and dysfunctions, and we don't want to leave that self-sac, right? So even in some of the thrillers and some of the movies that are made, we ask, oh, is it imitating life? But we'll see moms depicted as the opposite of the nurturing, caring, and place of safety, which to some extent contributes to a child who becomes a killer, terrorizing folks, right? They'll have those kinds of backgrounds. And society often mistakes trauma responses for personality. Right? It's just who I am. I'm just an overthinker. They're a people pleaser. They're indifferent or easygoing. Oh, I'm a workaholic. Or I'm an independent boss beach, right? Um, oh, they're never serious. They don't take anything serious. They're the epitome of the perfect student or the perfect wife, perfect husband, the perfect child, the perfect friend, the perfect employee, right? It's a person, oh, I'm just always prepared for the worst, or I'm going to keep progress, right? So if they really love me, they'll love me through the anger. And those are the people that are at the end. Or, oh, they're just really sensitive, right? Those are all the things that we attribute to people's personality, but in our actuality, there's more going on than that. There's patterns, okay, that are becoming normal over time. So they feel like part of who people are. You even adopt it as that's who I am. There's a couple of things on the list that I adopted myself. And without awareness, without that self-awareness, then those things get mislabeled as bad behavior, being too much, being too sensitive, right? And it leads to shame or self-blame. But in all actuality, those things are trauma responses to patterns that have been built over such a long time before you even became aware of them. And if you ever become aware of them, right? That's a huge thing because recognizing these things as trauma responses really can shift the focus from self-judgment to self-understanding, that awareness, right? And that awareness is going to then open the door to this compassionate change and healing. And that's why I go over the 48 laws of alignment as a way to see yourself and choose. Okay. There's some situations we're in when we're growing up. There's some choices that we can't follow through on, even if we want to, even if we do see that it should be different. But as an adult, we get to choose. Okay. Because many behaviors that feel like personality quirks are actually nervous system adaptations formed in response to that past stress, to that emotional pain, to unstable environment. Okay. And we survive them. We definitely do. But it's also why I still tell my adult children and my minor child too that therapy is a good thing. You should try it. Don't be afraid of it. But each person has to want to participate in that, right? You can't make someone, and until someone's ready, it's not going to happen. So when we're looking at violence, and I don't want to minimize it because yes, a person can recover from being hit, right? And they can still have wounds, they can still be damaged over time for that, right? It could adjust your mobility, a gait, how you function physically. But what about being rewired? What about recovering from that? What about being able to take back programming? What about being taught that love equals unpredictability, right? That's what you know. That's what you're used to. What about betrayal so deep it changes how you attach forever? All of those things are violence too. Some people might say, oh, they didn't hit me, right? Or I never saw my parent hit the other parent. But you witnessed a lot of things that said that love is unpredictable. Love is a struggle. Love hurts and you have to work through it to be successful. And that's what success looks like. So sometimes people ask questions and they don't understand the background behind it. Well, why would they stay? Why would they do this? Why would they do that? Because that is truth for them. That's all that has been seen or experienced until something else comes into the picture that is different, then they may not know that there's other choices available. Okay. Now, there's some studies around this. Let's see what we got here. There's some studies around this about psychological abuse and PTSD because there's some research, and I still flow either way with research. You know, you have to look at who's doing the research, um, what company they work for and things like that. But the data's out there, and it's saying that psychological violence has a strong correlation with PTSD, with depression, and with anxiety. And sometimes that correlation is stronger than just physical abuse alone. You have male individuals who are victims of female partners, right? Another point of shame. What? You got beat up by a girl? What? You got her put her hands on you? What? There's a lot of shame that comes with that. But at the end of the day, they're not the perpetrator, right? For whatever reason, if it's for not wanting to put their hands on the other person, if it's because they're non-confrontational, if it's whatever the reason is, they are still not the perpetrator, right? And the American Psychological Association reported that men who are abused by female partners will and can experience severe PTSD, severe depression, and they participate in this coercive control. right? Even the abuse of I'm gonna harm myself, right? To try to get someone else, manipulate them into changing some type of behavior or to manipulate them into staying a part of the toxic connection, right? So that stereotype that men are only the perpetrators, it's weird for that to still be an idea that we hold on to. The other day, I always post something that has something that's not correct in it, right? Just to see if people actually listen to it, read it, or pay attention. And because when people don't like something, like people love to correct you, right? So the people listening or read certain things, I'm looking for if there's a comment for something to say that because I know that it's there. For the first time that happened with a post about what was it about? Oh, getting a hysterectomy. And it was really a male concerned about, I don't know if this is safe, right? So it was just a little joking way to explain a hysterectomy. It was like, oh, there's a garage and a driveway. And then after the hysterectomy, just the driveway. And I said, you can still park there. If someone again, probably based on their experience, just came in with oh, she's going through all of this, and that's all he's worried about. I never gave context to why the conversation came up, but it definitely didn't have anything to do with he was just worried about getting what he needed. He was very concerned about the his partner wanting to engage, but like I don't know, is that even safe? Like it just doesn't seem so right so soon. So we bring those experiences with us, and it makes it hard for us to see people in any other light. Because again, that's all that we know. There are no other choices. Then we talked about revenge cheating, right? Now, there's some studies out there about that showing how that revenge infidelity report cheating as a way to restore the balance. Now we're even, right? Or it's so you can know how I feel. You felt hurt, that's exactly how I felt, right? And now we're even. But the emotional aftermath, that often intensifies the trauma instead of resolving it, right? It ups the trauma between the two, not necessarily resolving it. And it definitely changes trust between the two, right? So can you really say that that's healing or making it even? Or everybody wants reciprocation. So in this way, it'll be reciprocal wounding, right? And how good does that feel exactly? I would think not so well at all. And then let's take the term real quick, right? Because we talk about women not being violent. Um, let's see. But let's just take a look at a couple of examples. Let me try to share this. And you might say, oh, some are new and some are not. Don't worry about that part. Let's just, okay? Not because women are worse, but because history proves capacity for violence isn't about gender, okay? No matter how we want to spin it, no matter how polarizing the situation is, gender is not an indicator of necessarily whether there will be violence or no violence, right? But how we see it is different. So here, you might have heard of uh, Eileen Carol Warnos. Carol, if we use that nickname, I forget it'll be somebody diabolical. You think Karen is something, right? Until you meet Carol. Okay, the damsel of death is what they called her. She's but she's passed, well, she's executed, was an American serial killer, female. And they say she murdered at least 7 people. Happened down in Florida in the late 80s, early 90s. Um, she had a history of being a sex worker, a lot of things happening, teen pregnancy, a lot of things happening in her past. And that wasn't a part of her life. And it was described as another abandoning her. So there was that background, right? And she initially was saying that, okay, I was doing this in self-defense, because these people were sexually abusing and were sexually assaulting me. But later, she admitted to, okay, it's supposed to be a robbery, and then this happened, and then, boom, it just became a thing. And so she was arrested in 91 after a manhunt, okay, and she had some stolen property with her fingerprints on it. So she ended up being convicted of 6 murders. She received 6 death sentences for them and was executed by Ethan Jackson in 2002. So only 20 years ago. But then we have Belle, the Belle of the Bald Goddess, who they also called Hell's Princess and Butcher of Men. She was born with a different name too. Maybe it's German, I'm not sure, but it's like Brynhild Scorset. Oh, okay. It's how German too. But she was also a serial killer, but from the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. And she was suspected of murdering at least 14 people, maybe over 40 people, they said. And that would include kids, husbands, people that she was interested in. And she did it by posting ads. Believe it or not, in the personals, it's a Craigslist killer from 1800s, before there was even Craigslist, before there was even Tinder. There is someone attracting people through these personal ads, right? This was in Indiana. She lived on a farm, and it says her motive for killing was her insurance payouts. So take out a policy, or she would dismember them and bury them in these shallow graves, and then allegedly she died in a fire, but some people question that because her body was never found very quickly. But maybe she gave herself a second life, especially the way she was working with the whole insurance thing, right? De Medici, Catherine de Medici, Italian, um, became Queen of France through a marriage, and then a few of her sons also sat on the throne. So you know how moms are. She also had a cousin that was a pope as well. So she had power from. She could influence from both ends, right? Um, who did she marry? Henry II, she married. I think that's who she became queen with. Okay. Um, and a lot of religious unrest during her rule or whatever. And the only reason anyone even knows that anything happened is she wrote these wicked letters, right? If it were not for those letters, people would have thought that she was a Mother Teresa kind of type. Why do I say Mother Teresa? Not doing the same kind of thing, but you know Mother Teresa one way. And then there's some people that she allegedly helped that know her a whole entirely different way. And those two personalities do not match. They're complete 180s from each other. Okay? Healthy, healing savior, and monster and other reputations. So Catherine de Medici is kind of the same way. And had it not been for these letters, historians would have definitely excused her for a lot of things that happened. But because she penned those letters, I think she wanted people to, maybe she was a narcissist, maybe she wanted people to, right? She wanted to keep their legacy. But this is when you see the reach, right? Coming out like this is somebody with class, you know, so somebody who has something. So um, perhaps you wouldn't think that her power would be something so destructive, right? Uh, Henry was also named the most evil woman in Britain. And she had like a little bug, like Bonnie, but I don't think that her pride was calling the shots too much. I think he was just caught up in her web, right? And in the 60s, that's when they were running amok. Myra and her man, they killed some children. And it was said that they sexually assaulted four of the age ranges were from 10 to 17. Now, at first they were only convicted for three of the kids out of five, I think it was. But both ended up confessing later on. I mean, well after they had served a few years, I think it was like after 20 and 30 years, um, they admitted to the murders. But they said they said he was a psychopath, and he was begging for them to, hey, keep me locked up or let me die. But definitely, I don't want any to do that, right? But your girl, okay, how to give you sweet? But your girl's like, no, I have been informed. Okay, I'm rehabilitated. I have remorse. I'm sorry for what I did, and I am not a threat to society. Please let me out. So she appealed her life sentence many times. All right. But the trial judge, I think that had to do with like how could you even do this, right? They call them sadistic killers. It's like at most the baby. So I don't know why she got very good chance. But again, maybe something's not connected. Okay. But tell me this. If you're in danger or a person is in danger, then are you more apt to ask a woman for help or help a woman versus a man? Think about that. And then ask yourself, why is that? Is it because they're not the bear? Right? They may not be the bear, but they sure are. They're the wolf. And they're out here and they're doing it. Mary Ann Cotton, she's named after Britain's first serial killer. She was a nurse and a housekeeper that turned into a serial killer. She was executed in the 1800s. It was said that she poisoned her stepson. She was suspected of murdering up to 21 people. That included some husbands, some stepkids, and the majority of her own children, her own biological children. And for what reason? In the 1800s, I'm going to imagine that there was not many ways that women, got money and whatnot, but these insurance payouts seem to be a motive for people. She would poison people with arsenic, right? Try to mimic what they call a gastric fever back then. And for a long time, she evaded suspicion. Everybody thought, look at her. She looks, oh, you. What's she gonna know to you, right? And then some alarms started going off. Somebody caught on to her, started paying attention to her, and they actually sentenced her to a plain. That was beautiful. Beautiful that she did that. Now, this lady, she's just named the Queen of Me, right? When we think of powerful individuals, I don't want to say Anna Wintour, but just people who are kind of short with you, trying to treat you like a means to an end. That's Leona Humphrey. That she may not have been a murderer, but she's described as being flamboyant, and she had a reputation for this tyrannical behavior, especially because um, her employees were just like little ants. They're expendable. So she served time for tax evasion. One of the quotes that she's famous for is, "We don't pay taxes. Only the little people pay taxes," she says, right? She left the job more money than she left anyone in her family. When she died, she willed her dog like $12 million to take care of him for a lifetime. But then he had to keep her, people to have a home. Okay. There were some grandkids. And she looked at me had one child and two sets of grandkids. And one said maybe she favored them. And the other said spirit because she only willed two out of the four money from the estate. And so that had to be counted later. Now, all this wealth that she amassed, which she strategically acquired by a high school dropout. She didn't finish high school. She changed her name many, many times so she found something that fits, and a man put a ring that fit on her finger. And then she went into real estate, made money on her own doing that. And then she ended up moving up with somebody who, what do you call them? I don't know, they built hotels and things like that, big real estate. And so this just started basically bullying his projects too, and became back to that. Always making money, never losing it. But when she was just a real estate on her own, a lot of people accused her of strong arming them into buying property. Okay, she was not here to play. She was about the dollar. This might be what Trump's going to, secretly. I never heard him speak of it, but then we have Catherine Knight. Okay, she's Australian. Um, First woman in that country's history allegedly to be sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole because of this. She was convicted for the murder of her partner, not just his murder, but she skinned him. Okay, um, she skinned him and hung his skin up on a meat hanger. And that was all after she had stabbed me to them. Okay. It looks like they said that she had installed that meat hook in that bed so that he meditated. She cooked his head, she cooked parts of his body, and said that she had intentions of feeding those body parts to his children. But luckily, one of his employees, who must have been a good boss, because he was missing from work that day, they thought that was odd. So they called it in. I think that's before you needed to be 24 hours. Missing. If they called it in, they'll call her in the act of getting ready to have her last supper. She didn't know it was her last supper. That's exactly it. And then, of course, we're going to wrap it up with Wu, only female emperor China. Before any of us could actually remember, right? So everything you know is based on particular accounts of the cat. But basically, she was a concubine, became one of the highest concubines, somehow seduced the succeeding emperor, so she too had already developed a relationship with him, and then he became the emperor, and boom, they were married, and then she was the empress after his death. He deposed his sons, also claimed divinity, so that people worshiping her, right? Lots of expendables, is what I'll say. But I guess a lot of things also that were good and out of her brain as well. And so she didn't put any letters, okay, like Catherine did. And because of that, I think her legacy is staying, for the most part, intact, right? And yeah, she had to do what she had to do, but she was a minister. So, I mean, you might say that those examples are old, right? But they're not. When we talk about the Bureau of Statistics and Federal Bureau of Investigation, that's just the sample coming from different times. So this is not about modern women, the people say that too. This has nothing to do with modern women. This has to do with just people, right? Women throughout the ages, for whatever motive they may have. And even though it's a small percentage, the FBI and the Bureau of Justice Statistics says that women only account for about like 10 to 15% of arrests for violent crimes. And that's including if it happened there, assault and robbery, and also with those homicides, right? For murder or non-negligent manslaughter, 8 to 12% always. The total population, 7 to 9% of the women are incarcerated for violent offenses, right? So they're not a large portion of the prison system. But if you're just looking at women who are incarcerated, then about 35% of those individuals are incarcerated for violent offenses, just if you're looking at them, right? So they're a small piece of the population, but amongst themselves, violence not from them. So what's even important about the distinction? Well, men are dominating and we feel a severe physical violence statistically. And it's so funny when you start looking at these differences that I feel like I'm having the same conversation I had when we talked about Blacks and whites and the kind of crimes happening, right? But women tend to be underrepresented in those numbers. And I think it's because, like I said, with Medici, put in the letters, right? Had it not been for the letters, the admission of her ruthlessness, maybe she would have been held in a different light in history. So the point isn't to make these particular women a spectacle or to make women a spectacle when it comes to violence. The whole thing is actually complicated because the research on violence and intimate partner violence also shows that women report similar or sometimes higher rates of like slapping and throwing objects and hitting, right? That's their go-to move. But men are like choking out, maybe knocking people's head up against things, you know, horrible things. But so again, at violence is one has evidence and the other does not have evidence. So women, they tend to be more represented in things like reputation destruction, social sabotage is what you call relational aggression, right? Tell everybody how wrong you were, how small you were, how bad you were, how broke you were. They make everybody like give you the side eye. There's that coercive parenting violence, turning your kids against you as well, right? So you're alienated. Psychological aggression, and then there's the proxy violence. Proxy violence. What is that? Well, when you're using the kids, third parties, right? You're letting the friends know you don't know them like I know them. When you're using the system, maybe the court systems, right? The law enforcement system, the justice system against people. So the criminal justice systems measure what's bleeding, what's broken, right? Physically, what can I see that's broken? It struggles to measure what erodes though. Okay, that's that psychological that it erodes. A man touching a wall, that's gonna get logged, right? I can say that. A woman weaponizing paternity uncertainty, right? Well, he might not be yours anyway, right? That'll cause somebody to spiral, picking out false narratives, that silent treatment, revenge, triangulation, withholding emotions and intimacy, and that revenge infidelity, but being strategic about it. Oh, it's going to be the best friend. Oh, it's going to be the boss. Oh, you see, being strategic about it. That stuff often does not get law, and it could be hidden a little bit better, not because it isn't violent, because it definitely is violent, but because it doesn't fit our traditional visual language of violence. We don't see it the same. Okay, so if prison stats tell us who breaks bodies, right? That's what it is. Who creates physical harm? then what data is out there that tells us who breaking the minds other than the government and the military, right? Who breaking the minds other than the gurus and the church pastors? Who breaking the minds, right? And with that, I don't know why I said that last part, but with that, I just want to thank you for tuning into Shakespeare's Skinny. We're doing everything except keeping it cute about self-love, resilience, and personal development. It's not just for women, okay? Self-love, resilience, and personal development. It's definitely not just for women. And a man going on a self-love journey is not about being sassy at all. It's about becoming self-aware and choosing. If anything, both are going to need to come correct, okay, when they're dealing with you, I think twice before they're disturbing your peace because they know that you're serious about you. We don't play about you, okay? And you're not going to let nobody else play about you either. So maybe the most dangerous violence isn't the kind that breaks our body. Maybe it's the kind that makes us question ourselves so deeply that we start finishing the destruction for that person. Mm, mm. I spin the top, but we're the ones that keep that momentum. So see you next time. If there's something that you enjoyed about this podcast, please share it with someone. If you felt convicted, I think that's always good. There's been many a time. It's just one nod to say, hey, maybe I want to check that out. Doesn't mean you're going to choose something different. It definitely doesn't. But there's an opportunity for you to decide if you want to. Have a good one.